watch you while you sleep, holding you, lost inside. In sickness and in health, to be with you, just to be with you. And in your wedding dress, to have and to hold. Even at my best, I wanna let go. And you hold me in your arms, and all that I can see is my future in your hands. And all that I can feel is how long ever after.
Please take a seat. So I'd like to introduce to you our officiant for today's ceremony. It's Judge Noel Hyde. Judge Hyde was appointed to the 2nd District Court in July 2010 by Governor Gary Herbert. He serves primarily Morgan and Weber counties, and Judge Hyde received his law degree from Brigham Young University.
Thank you. I understand we're going to have an invocation before we proceed. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I believe Garth is going to offer that. Thank you.
Our Father in heaven, we thank you for the opportunity we have to be together here as friends and family to witness the ceremony of the marriage of Taylor and Marisa. We're grateful that everybody was able to travel in safety to get here. We ask you to bless us with thy spirit, and we ask you to bless Taylor and Marisa as they embark on this journey of marriage, that they will be strong and that they will have the love and support that they need. we ask you to bless them that they may always remember the things that are truly important. We're grateful for the many gifts that we have been blessed with, and we ask you to watch over us this night, and for those who are traveling, will do so in safety. And we pray for the name of Jesus Christ.
Amen. Thank you. And before we get any further, I do want to express appreciation both to Garth and Tara Hood and to Steve and Karen Kelly for the great honor that it is for me to be here to share this wonderful time with Taylor and Marisa. I've had a chance to meet them and talk with them a little bit, and these are a couple of wonderful people and well suited to one another. And to have such a beautiful day for this wonderful occasion is a real blessing that each of you will remember forever. As you look out at the people that are here, these are the people that love you and that are here to support you. And they support you not only today, but in the days to come. When there are needs or issues that arise, the people that you see here today are the people that will step up and help. I realize and know from experience over many years that the things that I say here today really make very little difference and will evaporate and be lost in the great never, never land minutes probably after they're spoken. But I do want to say a few things before we proceed with the most important event that's here. And I wanted to talk a little bit about two concepts, the concept of a heritage and the concept of a legacy. Your heritage is what you are given by those who have gone before you, and each of you have a wonderful heritage. I want you to think about your families, beginning and most especially with your parents. They have lived their lives for your benefit. They have sacrificed much so that you can stand here today in this place doing what you're doing. And the values that you have, to a large extent, the love that you share, can be traced to the love that is felt in the families that have gone before you. Never forget that heritage. Never forget to look to those people who have sacrificed so much for your benefit. And also a little bit about the heritage of the place in which you have chosen to be married. This is an absolutely beautiful setting. God's creations are everywhere, of course, and this is a special one. This place is a place which for millennia had not been known to civilized man at all. In fact, even when the Mormon pioneers came here in 1847, this valley was not one of the valleys that was known. When Brigham Young and the pioneers entered the Salt Lake Valley, they spread north and south, and they made it to Provo, they made it to Ogden, the Ogden area, Brigham City, Logan. All of those areas were well known to the Mormon pioneers long before this valley was ever even known. And in fact, it was not until 1857, which was 10 years after the pioneers first entered Salt Lake Valley, that the first of those pioneers first came into this valley. It was a group of 3 men that had been working in a lumber mill in Cottonwood Canyon, and they had heard rumors of a beautiful valley that existed on the east side of the mountains. And they wanted to find that valley, and they took an early summer day on horseback and came over the ridges from the Cottonwood Canyon area and rode into this valley. And news of what they found here spread quickly. There was a settlement in Provo, and the settlers in Provo, it was 1857. This was 10 years after the pioneers arrived, and they were firmly convinced that all the choice ground anywhere around there had already been claimed by someone, so they were looking for decent ground somewhere. And some of the ranchers from Provo made their way up Provo River and came into this valley. They called it the Provo Valley at the time, and they brought some cattle with them. And the next year, in 1858, which was the year after Johnson's army kind of settled down, having gone through Salt Lake, some settlers decided to bring their families here. And they came to this valley. It was still called the Provo Valley at the time, and they formed a settlement. Many of those that came originally from the Provo area were converts to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints from England. And they had joined the church in England at a time when the church was under the direction there of Heber C. Kimball. Heber C. Kimball in 1857 and 1858 was serving as a counselor to Brigham Young. And those early converts to the church decided, out of respect and honor for a church leader that they loved and revered, that they would name this valley for him. And so they named it the Heber Valley, and it bears that name to this day. This place, Midway, is a little bit different, and the initial question is midway between what? That's an interesting question. It's not midway between Heber City and anything, unless it's the mountains or Mount Timpanogos. But this community actually got its name in 1866. At that time, it was about the time of the Black Hawk Wars, and there was an Indian uprising that threatened many of the pioneer settlements. And there were actually two communities in this area of the Heber Valley, one north of here, one south of here. And those two settlements were instructed by Brigham Young to create a fort for protection from the Indians. And they couldn't decide where to make that fort, and so they compromised and built it midway between the two communities. And the fort became Midway, and that is the place then that the community eventually congregated, and this is that place. But at that time, many of the settlers that came to the Midway area in 1866 were Swiss. And that's why we still celebrate Swiss days here in Midway, and many of those family names continue. And it's so interesting that it is the names of those people and the heritage that they brought with them that is remembered even 150 years later. In much the same way, the heritage that is brought for each of you by your families is something that will continue on and on and on forever. The other concept is your legacy. Your parents and those that have come before, those that settled this valley, left a legacy. That's what you leave for those that follow you. You leave that legacy by the integrity with which you lead your lives, by the values that you bring to your family and to those that associate with you, by your honesty, by your commitment to one another, and by the pattern that you will develop that will be the marking of your family. Today begins a union. Up until today, you have been on separate paths. Those paths have been parallel for some time, but today they are joined. And today, the words I, me, and my are replaced by us, we, and our. And that becomes the focus of your discussions. It becomes the target of your commitment. And it becomes the basis upon which all of your decisions is made. I'm not going to give a whole lot of advice because it would be wasted, but one thing I am going to request that you remember. From today on, it doesn't matter who is right. What matters is what is right. Remembering the us, we, and our, that is a part of that in every way. That's enough of the discussion part. Since we have an aerial display that's going over us, we'll go to the more important part of the ceremony right now. I'm going to have you take each other by the right hand, if you would. Taylor Scott Hood and Marisa Ann Kelly, you have taken one another by the right hand in a token of the sacred promises that you will now enter into in the presence of God and the witnesses that are here today. Taylor Scott Hood, do you take Marisa Ann Kelly as your lawfully wedded wife, and do you, of your own voluntary choice, solemnly promise as her companion and lawfully wedded husband that you will commit all of yourself, including everything you have and are, to her and none else, that you will observe all the laws, covenants, and obligations pertaining to the holy state of matrimony, and that you will love, honor, and cherish her as long as you both shall live?
I do.
Marisa Ann Kelly, do you take Taylor Scott Hood as your lawfully wedded husband, and do you, of your own voluntary choice, solemnly promise as his companion and lawfully wedded wife that you commit all of yourself, including everything you have and are, to him and to none else, that you will observe all the laws, covenants, and obligations pertaining to the holy state of matrimony, and that you will love, honor, and cherish him as long as you both shall live.
I do.
At this point, we'll then exchange rings. If we have the bride's ring, which can be presented to the groom and placed on Marissa's finger. And now the groom's ring. Very good. By virtue of the legal authority vested in me as a judge of the 2nd District Court of the state of Utah, I pronounce you, Taylor Scott Hood and Marisa Ann Kelly, husband and wife, legally and lawfully wedded for the period of your mortal lives. May God bless your union with joy in your posterity and a long life of happiness together. And may he enable you to keep the sacred covenants you have made. You may now kiss each other as husband and wife. If you would now turn and face the audience, it is my pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce to you Taylor Scott Hood and Marisa Ann Hood, husband and wife. Congratulations to you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Congratulations.
All right. Good job.
Yeah.